The history of Middle-earth is filled with legendary blades. Some vast, radiant, capable of bringing down armies. Others engraved with ancient runes, carrying within them the memory of ages. But among them is one that can scarcely be called a sword at first glance. A dagger for an elf, yet for a hobbit, the weapon of a lifetime. Its name was simple: Sting. And here lies the paradox. It became one of Tolkien's most recognizable artifacts. Not Glamdring, not Orcrist, not the blades of kings, but a modest sword lifted by a hobbit who loved nothing more than staying at home and writing his memoirs. Today we shall uncover what makes this sword truly unique and reveal how we brought it into being. Welcome to the Fable Fabric, and let's begin. To understand Sting, we must journey back thousands of years to the First Age. Then, in the north of Middle-earth, there stood a city that today sounds like a myth: Gondolin. White towers, streets gleaming in the sunlight, a hidden valley encircled by mountains. It was a city of refuge, the last stronghold of the proud Noldor. The Noldorin smiths saw in weapons not mere pieces of steel. For them, forging was an art, akin to music. Each strike of the hammer on the anvil was a chord in the eternal song of the Ainur, and the finished blade, a fragment of the great harmony of the world. They forged steel that would not dull for centuries, creating weapons that absorbed enchantment. The defining trait of Gondolin's blades: they glowed whenever orcs were near. This was called the Light of Valinor. It was no decoration, but a weapon's purpose. In the darkness of tunnels and caverns, a glowing blade became a warning. The enemy was close. But why does Sting glow? In Tolkien's books, the answer is simple. Such was the magic of elvish smithcraft. Into every blade forged in Gondolin was woven a memory of darkness, a hatred for the orcs wrought by Morgoth. The metal itself could feel their approach and answered with a cold blue radiance. The story of the Hobbit and his blade began with a simple act of plunder. In the Troll's Cave, Bilbo and his companions discovered weapons of ancient days. For Gandalf, it was Glamdring, for Thorin, Orcrist, and for the Hobbit, a little sword. At first, Bilbo wore it awkwardly. For a resident of the Shire, the blade seemed more a decorative trinket than a true weapon. But everything changed in Mirkwood. In battle with the giant spiders, Bilbo wielded the blade in earnest for the first time. He cut through their webs, pierced the monstrous creatures, and overcoming his fear, saved his friends. It was then that he gave the weapon its name, Sting, and the name endured. With it, the blade made the journey there and back again, and later into the very heart of Mount Doom in the hands of Frodo Baggins. So, where does the work on a legendary sword begin? First of all, the master swordsmith creates a template on marked paper in order to preserve all the proportions and dimensions. Then, he cuts the template along its outline and transfers it onto a steel blank. To fix the markings, the lines are etched with a special tool whose tip is harder than the steel itself. And then comes the time to carefully cut everything out. Once the shape of the blade is prepared, the master moves to the grinding machine, which removes excess material from the flat surface of the sword. During this stage, it is extremely important not to overheat the blank, otherwise the steel may warp or even crack. Next comes the crafting of the guard. Since the guard requires a thicker piece of steel, the master begins by drilling holes in the blank with a drill press to ensure accuracy. After the initial treatment, with the help of a hand engraver and files, the guard is carefully fitted to the blade. This is a crucial step. If too much material is removed, the entire piece must be started anew. Then we proceed to the engraving. The master uses the method of acid etching. He first applies a protective coating to the areas meant to remain untouched, thus creating the pattern. Then he forms a small tray of clay around the blank and pours the acid inside. Once the acid has etched the design into the steel, the master carefully inspects the work and removes the protective coating. The pommel of the sword is also a very important element. It not only holds the entire construction together, but also ensures the proper balance of the weapon. An interesting detail is that in the Lord of the Rings films, the sword differs from the one shown in The Hobbit. When Sting comes into Frodo's hands, it bears an engraving that reads, "Magnus is my name. I am the spider's bane. But when Bilbo first discovers the blade, it has no name of its own, and it would be strange to find such an inscription upon it. The official stance of the filmmakers and Weta Workshop is that the engraving was added to the sword after Bilbo's journey. Though it is hard to imagine why such a heroic hobbit would have ever needed it, that is why we are making both versions of this weapon. The next stage is the creation of the scabbard. The master once again takes measurements, then makes a wooden blank with a cavity for the blade. The blank is sanded smooth and covered with leather. Covering with leather is an extremely meticulous process. Even though the surface of the scabbard is not large, the craftsman must select a flawless piece of hide, treat it properly with glue, and stitch it. A mistake at any of these stages means the leather will not hold its shape and will form wrinkles. After the glue has dried, the master fits the metal fittings for the scabbard. Thin steel is taken and shaped by hand, then decorated with etched patterns and finished manually until flawless. Finally, the sword is assembled together with the handle, upon which the design had already been prepared in advance. Yes, this sword may not be large in size, but without a doubt, Sting became one of the most memorable blades in Tolkien's entire legendarium, once again proving that the small can achieve greatness. And so, even a single like, subscription, or comment allows us to create more content for you.